Welcome to the Visual Storytelling Podcast. My name is Fred Ranger, and I'm happy that you're joining us this week because we have a very, very special guest. My guest this week is Jean-Marie from Portsmouth, and I practice both the name and the location multiple times before the recording. And Jean-Marie is a Portsmouth-based photographer in New Hampshire. She is so talented. You can see her work in the Leica boutiques down there, also on Instagram, on her own website. She does client work. She does some magnificent black and white photography. First of all, Jean-Marie, thank you so much for joining me today on the Visual Storytelling Podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited. And I'm thrilled that you were able to actually pronounce my name.
I was so nervous.
Win.
I was looking at my notes. I was like repeating in my head, and I managed to pull it off. So I'm glad I could do the intro right. But again, thank you so much, Jean-Marie, because we've been chatting for several months now. We're both part of the Leica Street Photography Collective, where we exchange ideas, we talk about gear, we talk about art. But today, I have a lot of questions for you because I've been following your work for several months, I would say years now, and I've been very intrigued about how you actually got to become a photographer first, and also your choice of black and white. But let's start with the very beginning, maybe introducing yourself and also telling the listeners of this podcast how you found out about photography and why are you still in love with photography today?
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. I am thrilled to join your esteemed list of guests that you've had thus far. So I'm glad to join the discussion. If memory serves me, after looking at some of your list of your podcasts, I very well may be the first female photographer that you've interviewed. Is that true?
That is true. Actually, you're totally right. Yeah. Let's do a virtual high five through the
high five on that one. There we go.
Nice.
That's great. So I am honored to be the first woman that you've interviewed. So that's great. Let's see, where do we start? Photography. How did I get into photography? I have been. Let's see. When I was in college, so I grew up in Michigan. Ironically, another bordering state of Canada, which is why I studied French. Whole nother discussion there. But I had an interest in photography, but never really knew how to, like, where to start, where to go around it. And when I went off to college, my undergrad, I actually studied engineering. So math, science. I was at Purdue University. I paid my own way through school. And I got to my senior year, and there was one person that I had, it was a communications class or some general elective. This woman was studying art, and I was like, oh my gosh, how does this happen? How do you, like, what are you going to do for a living? Like, I had my whole path planned out. And she looked at some of my photos, because this is like literally I had to go home and grab them out of a box, right, and show them to her at that time. I'm dating myself. And she's like, yeah, because I didn't have a cell phone, by the way. This is like how old I am. So.
I can relate to that.
It was like the early to mid 90s. And she was like, no, this is really good. And that was landscape kind of work. And she said, you should, first of all, you should frame this, right? And we went through a whole process of choosing the mat and frame for that. And I was like, wow, this is really complicated. But then my senior year, when I realized it wasn't going to cost me any extra money beyond what I was already paying, turning over my life to the university, basically, I realized that I could take a photography class. And so I started in film. It was pretty intense as far as, it was like, 5 days a week. We were in the labs. It was all film. I used part of my student loan to go pick up a Nikon N6006.
Nice.
That was my very first camera. I still have it today. I can't seem to get rid of it many years later. And I just, I learned the basics of, composition, light, exposure, just the complexities, the triad, in the camera and how to create images. And then, of course, working in the darkroom was pretty fun too. And I loved it, but then I graduated in engineering, and I'm like, well, what the hell am I going to do with that? Like, this is great. I love photography, but I need to go make a living. So I didn't shoot much when I was in my 20s. I was going to grad school. I was working. Things were a little crazy. I was also married at the time. I got married pretty soon out of college, and I was living down in Texas, and there wasn't really a community around photography at all. I showed up to one meeting for this Fort Worth camera club thing that they had, and I was like, okay, this group is not for me.
Is
I
this
won't describe it,
photography?
but yeah, I was like, yeah, okay, I don't think this is what I'm really looking for. So I stepped back from it. But then over time, throughout really my 20s, and as I started to get into my early 30s, the digital scene was exploding. I got divorced. All my exes live in Texas, right? I started traveling a lot more. And I was doing a lot of like landscape work, and this was all color, right? Landscape, some portrait work. And then people started seeing my portraits and they're like, oh, will you take mine? And I started to build a little business. And then I got calls for weddings. And I was like, are you sure you guys want me to do this? And after I did the first one, I started to get even more calls. But then I had to step back and I was like, this is great, but it's not really what I enjoy. I want to go back to some of the just exploring. And what I found was with more of my travel for work, I was doing more documentary style photography, which I really loved. And I think that that's what really propelled me into street photography. I didn't really know that street photography was what I was doing at the time, when I was doing it and creating it and exploring and doing all this sort of, you know, culture. I like to explore, different cities and learn about their cultures and traditions and the people. It's really all about the people. But I didn't know that that's what I was doing at the time, more around street photography. And it just sort of grew from there. I went to a workshop. I still remember it back in, I think it was 2018 with Juan Murray in Boston. Juan is great if you're not familiar with him and his work. And he shot it might have been 2019 actually. Should get my dates right there. Signs of aging, right there. I can't get my dates right. He did a course, and I wasn't. We can talk gear later, but I was shooting a certain type of camera. But he did a course, a weekend workshop that was actually free. You just had to be there. Called 6 Feet Under.
Mm.
It was all about getting close. Ironic, right? Right before
Yeah.
COVID. It was all about like getting close and how to really capture, these moments with people and just getting in close, but being very discreet about it. And that for me was really a turning point. And it just sort of took off from there. And then I realized I started to explore and learn a lot more about street photography, and it's just sort of grown from there.
So speaking of phases, right? So I can relate to a lot of what you're saying because I think we're about the same age or around the same age. And I also started.
I'm 47.
47. That's the thing. You look very young. So now I'm like, okay, so yeah, I'm a bit younger, but I did kind of follow the same path. And you were talking about university, starting with film. I was studying communication in university, but it was not arts or not like photography. But I had one course with this one teacher that actually was so interesting. I was actually going to university just for that course. I mean, I finished the rest of the university and I had fun, but that course was like, oh my God, this is a whole nother world. So I relate to a lot of your points, but I think you mentioned that at some point you kind of worked as a photographer and it kind of changed a bit your view on it, and then you wanted to go back to more on the art side of photography. So Can you explain how you got to a point where you're like, oh no, okay, I need to go into the creative side of things and not necessarily into the business side of things? And was it a conscious decision, or did you at some point made a decision to say, you know what, I don't want to go the wedding or the multiple clients product photography and so on and so forth route, and I want to invest more into my street photography? Was there a moment in time for that?
There were a few things. While there is a lot of um, creative flexibility with weddings, you do still have, I mean, weddings are, let's face it, weddings are very high stress.
Yeah.
I think that if you're going to be a successful wedding photographer, and quite honestly, I probably could have been well on my way for that. It You have to be fully committed to it, but you have to also be able to deal with a wide range of personalities. And let me tell you, I think I saw them all from one end of the spectrum to the other.
Yeah.
And so, it was, people say one thing, and then they really want another. And, my, you know, I worked with attorneys, I had contracts, I was dealing with all sorts of different things. But when you have certain people involved in this process, and they think they know what they want, and then you produce, or you provide this beautiful, wedding portfolio, and then they're like, maybe, but maybe, or even better yet, my favorite is during the wedding, they start just telling you what to do.
Yeah.
Right. There's just all of those things, they start adding up. And I realized for myself, with everything else I have going on, because I still work
Yeah.
full time professionally. And so I was just like, I'm not finding the joy here. I'm not really truly leveraging this as a creative outlet like I was hoping to, and what it started out to be. And it's more stress, than fun and enjoyment, and really building my brand, as a photographer as well. So I was just like, yeah, I don't think I want to head down that path.
That it's
Cut
again,
it.
yeah, again, I can relate to what you're saying. I did a couple, like you, weddings, and mostly for
Mhm.
friends and stuff, but also some product shots for barber shops and so on and so forth. And the level of stress every time I would be doing it, I don't know if it's the same for you. I would be like, why am I doing this again? I don't
Yeah,
have to get money from that
right.
enjoyment of taking photographs. I can actually just go on the street. And isn't there something liberating going on the street on your own
Yeah,
terms, taking photos of what you want, taking a bad
yeah,
photo if you want, taking a
yeah,
what you think is a good photo if you want, not taking any photos at all if you want?
yeah.
Is that liberating, right?
It's totally liberating. And if you're like, hey, I'm all good, I'm gonna go have a beer, like, that's okay too. That's the nice part about it. You don't
Exactly.
really get that flexibility with wedding. But if somebody, to be fair, I have told friends, close friends, because some of them have been they've been very vocal, and I said, look, um, if you ever get married, sure, I would do it. I would absolutely do it.
Yeah.
So, it's not to say I won't ever do one again, but it's not my priority.
So going back to the liberating moment where you can just go on the street with your camera taking photos of what you want, um, is there something that pushes you to go out, maybe not every day but every week or every month, and try to create new stories? What's the motivating factor for you to, because I mean, on the other hand, yes, it's very liberating, but it can very quickly become just taking another image of another guy crossing the street with the shadow and blah blah blah. There's always a double-edged sword on each side, right? When you're a working photographer, you get money from it, you pay for the food to put on the table. There's a very good reason to go out with your camera. So what keeps you
Sure.
motivated, Jean Marie, to go out on the street and still create some images and share them?
Yeah. Actually, that's not really a question I had thought about and prepared for, but my immediate reaction is just thinking about, as I am out on the streets, and exploring people, and I mean, I am really looking at capturing basic human activity,
Mm,
like this very nascent emotion of people. And for myself, literally no two people are alike.
yeah.
I mean, every time I am out, no matter what city it is, no matter what time of day, no matter what country, no matter whatever it is, there are always different people out, and I think that that's probably like the large part of what keeps me going. I mean, I every time I'm out, I meet different people, and I intentionally do not engage with people, which is something more we can
Huh.
talk about. But I intentionally do not engage with people when I am creating images because I am really trying to capture them when they are completely unaware. But I like just what day is today? Sunday. Just 2 days ago, I was in Boston wandering around, and I came across this gorgeous woman in the Common. I noticed her hair right away. I actually posted that on Instagram just yesterday.
Yeah.
And as I was approaching her, I saw a woman um, 10 feet away with a Hasselblad, and I was like,
Huh.
"Hey, what's going on?" And we just
Hello.
strike up. Yeah, and so we just struck up a conversation, and we started meeting. And I'm meeting these interesting people, and actually, while I was talking to the woman with the Hasselblad, I'm actually creating the photo of the other woman right there. And she had
Nice.
no idea.
And
Um,
I love how you put it on your, speaking of Instagram, you put it on your new Instagram. We can also talk about that later. But you did say that you are capturing the moments between the moments. And I
yeah.
love that sentence because you can really feel on your feed that those are candid moments. Those are, again, to your point, not staged or not planned.
Mhm.
And people are very natural. This is really interesting because you can feel that they're just going about their life. You're capturing that, frame, that one or that 1/25th of a second or 1/25th of a second of their life. And then it just, this moment will never come back in time, right? There's a bit of magic in capturing those in between moments. So I really want to commend that because that's, you can feel it through the whole body of work that you're publishing there.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, there's always this talk about the decisive moment, right? And what that truly is. And I think, when I'm thinking about these moments between the moments, it is when we're quite honestly making sense of our existence
Yeah,
as
I
humans.
agree.
In most cases, we're sensing, we're interpreting, we're navigating, we're really presenting ourselves to the world, and those are just those fleeting moments, and so that's why I don't approach most subjects. I do not approach at all. And with the gear that I use now, I shoot largely from the hip, which
Aha.
fascinates people, a lot of images I'm not even looking at the subject as I am catch. So I'm shooting with a rangefinder, right? I'm using zone focusing,
Yeah.
and I am not even looking at the subject. I'm trying to guess in my head how far away they are so that I can actually get them in focus. But most often, I'm not even looking at them. And I love shooting like later in the day when I can actually wear my sunglasses because
Hmm.
sometimes I'll wear sunglasses with a nice reflective lens, right? And they can't see where I'm looking at all.
So basically,
So
Jean-Marie,
that's
you're a spy. That's what you're telling us. You're a spy.
a little bit. A
but
little bit.
but speaking of choices, and we can get back to the gear, but I'm actually more interested in learning a little bit more on the background of choosing black and white as the way to express those moments in between moments. I'm sure you can shoot color and very
Mhm.
efficiently, but you decided to go all in on black and white. I'm guessing the camera is it a monochrome Leica that you have as a main
Yeah,
tool?
I
Yeah,
I have the M10 monochrome, and I have the M10 as well.
there you go. So let's talk about the gear after, but
Yeah.
walk me through your thought process on I'm going in to use black and white for most of my work.
Yes. So actually, If we could still see my old Instagram account, if we were looking at, and I think I've probably taken most of it off of my website now because you're right, I have focused more on black and white. But
Yeah.
um, I did actually start shooting color. And I found, and I was doing a mix of both color and black and white. I found I was really struggling with just consistency. First of all, dealing with, tones, and maybe if I was shooting film, it would have been a little bit different story. But shooting digital, I was dealing with tones and processing everything in post, and I just didn't like what I was getting. I just didn't feel very consistent. I also didn't feel like they were very. I didn't feel like they were as emotional as the black and white.
Hmm.
And so when I started doing more work in black and white, for me personally, the way I was processing them, I started to notice the subjects and what I was really focusing on. And maybe it's just me because I made the image and I'm not doing the post. But as I was doing in black and white, I found what I was actually focusing on in making that image was starting to really jump out more. It was starting to stand out. It was starting to be more meaningful. It was starting to be more impactful. And I feel like I could also create just a stronger consistency across all of my work with black and white, which maybe I don't know. Some might say that's a little bit of a cop out, right? I don't know. But for me, I think the last piece is just the timeless aspect of it.
Yeah, I was about to
Um,
ask about that.
yeah,
Yeah.
that well, it's you can't deny that the black and white images are just yeah, they are timeless. And I have had people say to me, they'll see a certain and they're like, wait a sec, was that 2022 or was that like 1946? I'm
Yeah.
like, well, first of all, I wasn't around in 1946.
Thank you for that question, but no, I wasn't around.
these are these are all mine. So let's just, so
This is not
um,
Henri Cartier-Bresson picture. Those are mine.
exactly.
But you're
So,
right.
but that,
Yeah, I mean
yeah.
the fact that you focus on the subject. Do you treat the light differently when you know that the image is going to be black and white than when you were shooting with the? And by the way, on your website in the about section you have this big Nikon, I guess, like massive
Yep.
camera. I guess this was color, and so
Yep.
would you be treating the light differently if you know that it's a monochrome sensor and it's a different way of treating the light, or you shoot the same way as you would with a color camera?
Only in the low light, I
Yes.
feel like, because in the low light with the monochrome, I have a wide range of freedom with that
Can
monochrome.
go to
I mean, it's
50,000,
pretty,
right? ISO 50,000
yeah,
without a yeah any noise.
right. And so, I mean, there are some images that I've literally like I've made them. I've looked at them in the viewfinder. I'm like, wow, well, that's nothing. That's just like black. I need to shift my exposure or do something. And I get home and I just say, oh, well, let me just slide over the exposure and just see what I can do here. And I'm shocked with what I can actually do with the image.
It's very very tempting. I mean, I have this little baby here, the Leica M10, just like you. But I'm
Yes.
looking at either the Q2 monochrome or adding the M10 monochrome to the kit. Now that you talk about it so passionately, I might actually give it even more thought and
Yeah.
try that. I know, I'm like you. I feel that consistency is key. Consistency is important. And I mean, you've been shooting for a long time. I've been shooting for a long time. At some point, you're like, what? To your point, what's my style? What's my voice? And I've interviewed Phil Penman, and he was
Yeah.
another black and white photographer, and he was very adamant and very precise when he said, you know what? First, you have to shoot a lot and shoot a lot of bad pictures, which we all take every day, bad pictures. Even him, even Henri Cartier-Bresson, all the guys. But at the end of the day, you find your voice not necessarily in the tone or the color, but in consistency. And if black and white helps you get there faster or helps you get in the right state of mind, just go for it. So I thought it was clever when he said that, and it made me think about your work too, because you made that conscious choice of, going all in on black and white. But we do have to talk about the gear, because this is not a gear show, but it is an important part of the experience of photography. Because if not, we would be all shooting a Canon, whatever, 5D Mark, whatever, and
Right.
life would be great. But we made a conscious choice to, you and I, because we both shoot on those cameras, to invest a lot of money. Those are not the cheapest cameras. I had to sell I have one kid left. The other one I had to sell it. No, I'm just kidding. But I made the choice. You made the choice to invest in Leica cameras, and sometimes we get judged for it, because people are like, well, you know what, my Fuji or my whatever can do the exact same thing. I just put it in monochrome and all good. But to that effect, why did you decide to move into the Leica, how can I say, world ecosystem,
Yeah.
cult, whatever it's called?
Cult.
Yeah.
I think cult is more appropriate. Yeah. I I started it's funny. I never really actually for years I never really knew a lot about Leica. I knew about I mean, obviously the brand has always been there, and as a photographer, you can't just not know anything about the brand. But I was like, oh, I'll never own one of those. That's silly.
You're like, they're cool. Then you look
And
at the price, like, oh no, they're not that cool. No, I don't want it.
and I'm like, they're not that cool, right? And so, but for me, the turning point was actually when I started really doing more, focusing on my street photography and developing that. That course that I took that I mentioned, 6 Feet Under with Juan, I actually was shooting a Nikon DF, I believe, at the time, and with a 50 millimeter, and it, I was having success with it, but then what I didn't like was actually the size and the lack of discretion that I had with that camera. Um, so I had borrowed, I believe I had borrowed an M10 from the Boston store at the time. They were still allowing that to happen, and I was like, oh shoot, I shouldn't have done that. This is a
it's
game
it's
changer.
like a drug.
Um, right. And then I was like, okay, like which limb do you want to cut off first? Like what part, like, do you want to just sell my house? Like,
Yeah.
how does this work? Right. So, yeah, so I picked up the M10 and the 50 Lux as
Mm,
my starter
yeah.
kit, if you will.
Yeah.
And, I just went out right away with it and started experimenting, and there is a learning curve, right? When you're not used to shooting with a rangefinder, it'd been years and years and years since I had shot with a rangefinder, like, I don't know, 30 years or something, many years. And, I was 2. No, I'm kidding. It took a while, and I was, like, the first couple of days, I was like, "Maybe this was a bad idea. That's a lot of money for this
For
mistake,"
something that's
right?
so hard to focus and stuff.
Something that's
Yeah.
so hard. But then when I finally got like when it clicked,
Mm.
when I mean, I hate that whole like, the moment it clicks kind of thing, but it's true. It's really true. I think it was probably my third day out with it, and I started to really figure out the zone focusing, and then, and everything is manual, so you're constantly making adjustments, but I figured it out, and then I started seeing, like, just in the viewfinder on the back, I was seeing what I was creating, and I brought it home, and I loaded the images. I'm looking at them raw compared to in Lightroom, actually, compared to what I had shot before on my Nikon. I was like, okay, I made the right choice here. It was just, yeah, it was an easy sell from that point. I think from a travel standpoint, the ease, quite honestly, the size is great. Ironically, though, I never in my wildest dreams would have thought I would have picked up a dedicated black and white camera.
Yeah.
I mean, I was like, at that price, who am I? Like,
Because
this is silly.
the first one was the color M10 regular.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Okay.
right. So, and then they came out with the M10 monochrome, and I actually remember I went out for a day. The Boston store was gracious enough to let me borrow a body. Um, I went out. It was the body in the 28 Summilux,
Uh-huh.
and I went out with Juan, met up with him in the area that afternoon, went out for half a day. I got back, I'm looking at everything just after being out with him for 3 or 4 hours. And I was like, okay, yep, we're going to order one of those. I could already tell.
Yeah.
It was pretty distinct. And now, oddly, so this past spring, I had picked up I'd had the M10M. I picked up the 28 Lux. I'd had the 28 Summicron.
Yeah.
And I was fortunate enough to sell that. I picked up the Lux. Love that. And I mean, I went to New Orleans for Mardi Gras, and I did not shoot any color. And people are like, wait a sec, you're in this world of fascinating color. But for me, the black and white was it was incredible. The color was almost overpowering.
Yeah.
It was definitely overwhelming. So I only shot black and white for something like Mardi Gras, which
It,
is a little crazy, but it's
it,
fantastic.
no, I can see it. And it actually brings me to a question, which is kind of a core question to this podcast. And I ask it to all the people I interview. Storytelling. Do you feel that black and white actually helps your storytelling? I mean, you mentioned about highlighting the subject and the story. So how does black and white play a role into your storytelling?
Yeah. I think black and white, because it it simplifies things, right? It helps you simplify what is in the image. It helps you focus on the subject. It helps you remember, I'm focusing on that nascent emotion. So there's that old saying, show me a photo that shows you what you felt and not what you saw.
Hmm.
So I feel like the black and white with the work that I do and that storytelling aspect of it helps really bring out that point around what I felt in that moment, that person is being, unaware and uninhibited in themselves, right? That just stands right out in the black and white.
Is that how you decide if it's a good image or no? Because I mean, I'm sure you take hundreds of shots, you go through them, you call them. What makes you go flag or pick on one of your image?
Yeah, it's the emotion.
The emotion,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
It's all the emotion. I mean, don't get me wrong. I love a good, light and shadow up against a building, silhouette kind of fun photo. I think they're probably overused, right, in many
It gets
cases,
the
but
likes on the Insta.
right, right. But I'll certainly, if I see the light and it's fantastic, I'm not going to walk away from that. So
You're not
that'll
like,
be
nah,
there.
not for me. I'm not that kind of photographer.
Yeah, but I mean, I think yeah, that emotion, that raw
Mm.
emotion, I feel like a lot of times the black and white really helps draw that out with the image.
Did you start it off with? Do you start your day with a plan, like, hey, I'm going to capture this type of story, or do you literally go with a white piece of paper and you're writing those stories as you walk the streets?
So, funny story about that. I, being an engineer by trade, if you will, in education, um, man, I love a good plan.
Do you have an Excel sheet
And
of all the shots you're gonna take throughout the day?
yeah, let me tell you, I love a good plan, and I like if we're talking about like planning anything, I will be the first to sign up, right? I am a planner. However, ironically, when it comes to my street photography, it is pretty much the exact opposite.
Nice.
And I I, I may the most um like the closest I'd get to a plan would be thinking, okay, it's this time of day. What do I know about where I'm at and the architecture and the light? That's about it. I mean, there are certain things like a plan around, okay, yes, I'm going to be in New Orleans for Mardi Gras. Um, right? That could be considered a plan,
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah.
But I had 4 days there and I was walking like 20 miles a day.
Wow.
I had, I had no plan. My plan was to, you know, take photos, see amazing people, have fun, have a cocktail. Like that was my plan, right?
Yeah.
So it didn't go beyond that. A couple of years ago, I took a course with Craig Semetko, and I love Craig's work. And he actually has gotten more into color as of late over the past few years. And there were a couple of things that stood out. And one of the things I remember about his guidance was lose the plan. Like you're like he said, you need to consider yourself lucky. You need to just say yes, and you need to lose the plan. Just period. Lose the plan. So like those things still stick with me today, and I try to and I do. I'll get out of my car. I'll grab my camera. I'm like, today's gonna be a good day. I feel lucky. I'm gonna meet some interesting people. I'm gonna see some great subjects. I'm going to anticipate, some super cool stuff, and it's going to be a good day.
And are you going one camera, one lens to simplify it even more?
I am.
Nice.
I am. Yeah. Yeah. I think because I usually do create my images, make them very close to people. I've found that shooting that 28 lux is the way to go for me.
So 28, 50 if you need it. Any other lens in your arsenal of lenses?
No, not M lenses. I do. You get sucked in, right? I do have the SL2S.
Oh too. My God.
I know.
Another camera.
I have the newer what is it? 20, is it a 24 to 90?
Yeah, there's a 24 to 90. There's a 24 to 70.
24 to 70 2.8.
Yeah, this is a great lens. Yeah.
Yeah. So I have that as well, and I picked up one of their cute little flashes, and I can shoot off-camera flash with that. So I've actually done some portrait work with that camera, which is kind of fun.
But not necessarily street photography with the big
never.
SL. Yeah.
Never.
That's more for client work, portrait shoots, and so on. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. And I quite honestly don't even know the last time I shot my M10 on the streets. It's been a while. Because since I've gotten the M10M, that's been my go-to.
So wait, you're saying there's an M10 that's collecting dust in your house? Is that what you're saying?
No. It's just I create other pieces of work, right?
Nice.
So sometimes, I love to be outdoors, and I live right by the ocean. So I certainly do create. I'll still go out and do some fun landscape work and things like that, and just explore. And especially when I'm out like hiking or, doing something like that. So change of seasons, good snowfall. Things like that. Although it was 75 degrees Fahrenheit yesterday, it was like summer.
Here too, it was literally people in shorts and just skateboards, and I'm like, okay, this is my brain. Literally, my friend sent me a photo of a tree that wanted to like grow back. Like it was weird. It was really
It's
Some leaf wanted to go back. Anyways, it's some people that are skeptical about the climate change. I think yeah, you can you can take just a walk outside
yeah,
yesterday, and yeah.
yeah,
Um,
I agree.
Jean-Marie, speaking of sharing your work, and you decided to use Instagram for the black and white work, and
Mhm.
I'm hearing that there's other work that you're not necessarily sharing on this platform, but your whole relation with social media, and I know you
Yeah.
went through a, I don't want to say painful, because those are first world problems. I mean, some people have way bigger problems than that, but your account on Instagram got hacked, and I was actually part of the group that said like, this is not Jean Marie, and this is very weird the way she talks to me, and she wants me to click on this and that. So your
Mhm.
account got hacked. You had a big following there, and now you
Mhm.
restarted it all. So what's your relationship with social media, Jean Marie, after this learning experience? We'll call it this way.
Oh, yes, learning experience indeed. Really wanted to tell it to go pound sand.
That's a nice way of saying
It's
it.
the
Yeah.
nicest way to put it. Um, I had to really think about it, quite honestly, after all of that happened, and just the undue stress of dealing with it all. If I really wanted to like give it a go again or not. And what I realized, so I this is I'm going to get a little philosophical. No, I don't know if it's philosophical, whatever it is. I learned the value of reflection
Hmm.
years ago, right? I think it's an important tool. And I had to literally like sit down and because I'm a planner, I like this. And I made myself a little plus delta list. And I was fully expecting that delta list to be really, really, really long about Instagram and social media in general. And then I realized that so many of the connections that I have made, people that I've met, and people literally all over the world. We're not talking just in the United States or just in North America. I mean, I'm headed to London over Christmas, and I've got contacts I'm reaching out to there. It's like, hey, I'm going to be in Paris this summer. What should I, do you want to connect, or who should I chat? I mean, it's just incredible these connections that I've made, and those I found to be pretty invaluable. So that coupled with, I think, like some of the work with Leica when I was exhibiting in the gallery last summer, just all of the different. I don't know. I don't think you can't. I don't think you can't
Hmm.
not. Is that the right way to say?
I don't think you
I don't think there's a
cannot
choice.
not.
Unfortunately,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't think there's a choice. But I think that it did allow me the opportunity to take a step back and decide, okay, what do I really want to do with this? What kind of connections do I want to make? It for me, it's not about like, oh my gosh, how many likes did I get on that photo? Or how many followers do I have? It is not about that at all for me. It's more about those very real connections that I can make with people. And for example, yourself, right?
Yep.
That's how we were able to connect, was through mutual connections through that, right?
Absolutely.
So I am on Vero.
Yeah.
How do you
Vero.
pronounce it? Vero
Or you
as
could say
well.
Vero in French, depending on.
Vero.
Voilà.
Oui, monsieur. Right? Yeah. So, however you want to pronounce it, I'm on there as well, and I think that has picked up a little bit of traction. Um, like like Phil said, like you mentioned you
Yep.
interviewed Phil. I did listen to that interview as well, and I actually took one of Phil's courses. He was fantastic, and he's a big cyclist as well.
Yeah.
So we
Yeah.
have some common ground, and he didn't just work in the industry. He actually rides bikes too. So I don't think you have a choice in whether you're on the platforms or not, quite honestly, if you want to make a go at this. But I think how you leverage it, and how you also, quite honestly, let it impact yourself,
Yeah.
um, is important.
I could,
So I don't love it.
yeah.
I don't love it.
And same for me. And some listeners know that, and some people who follow me on YouTube know that too. I built a career around social media, not necessarily on with photography, but in other realm of life. But I literally found that in the past 5 years, there was a big shift towards those companies becoming public. And what you do when you're public, you need to generate profit. For who? For shareholders. So the whole shift between connecting people, and people still connect through those platforms. You just need to cut through the advertising, the algorithm, the misinformation, Russia trying to hack the whole thing is just a big melting pot of people trying to grab your attention, your money, or your vote. Or I don't want to go into politics, especially now before next week in the States. But all that to say, it's becoming harder to, first of all, trust those platforms with our data. And when I say our data, when you're a photographer, your photo, your image, it's valuable. Some people sell photos for a living. Some people monetize those photos through various means, whether if it's a book or so, it's worth something. And then you're sharing all your other information. So it becomes always a dilemma for. And I talk with a lot of photographers on this podcast, and now I'm including you in this group of photographers that are doing it but not liking it, but thinking about other ways to do it. Vero is one example. I mean, is it going to be around in 2 years? Who knows? They're trying something different. At some point, they will need to make money, just like Facebook and just like other platforms. So, wow, it's a bit of a strange time we live in, because it's a necessary evil. Is that how we say it in English? To you have to be on it, but you don't like it. I thought at some point that you could make it without social media if you're a creative photographer, filmmaker. I don't think that anymore. It's just the way the business is structured, the way the connections are made, to your point. That's the way in 2022 and, over the past 5 years, and then, over the next 10 years, it's going to be like that.
I mean, let's face it, look at like one of the photographers that I adore is Salgado, right? Yeah. He's even on Instagram.
Yep. So. He's like, hey, you know what? If that can sell another print, I will do it.
Yeah. And you know what? Believe it or not, I have actually sold. Like, I've had people reach out and they say, hey, I love that image. Can I buy that from you?
Yep.
And if it's not up on my website, then I just, load it up very promptly and send them to my website and they can order it up. Right. So, but it's also, I think it's helpful, like locally, I have, in fact, I just picked up, I know folks at home can't see this, but I just picked up, like, I've got 15 prints that are fully matted and signed that were at a local gallery. So it helps just, locally pushing people to the galleries, helping them understand your work, or even, I can be out in a social environment and chatting away, and inevitably it comes up, oh, you're a photographer. What do you do? Let me see your work. Oh, where can I buy some of that? I'm like, actually, the gallery around the corner has 15 signed prints. Go buy one. Go buy 12 or 15 for all of your friends and neighbors, for the holidays.
Yeah. That's exactly it. And I think you said it best. And I'm taking a real note and a mental note of it. You said it's how you let it or not affect you in your day-to-day life. When you get bad comments, I got one today about one photo that I posted. The person said, is that even, I feel the photo is not well composed and the light is blown out. I'm like, okay, that's cool. It's a criticism. That's fine. But if you're somebody who doesn't take criticism well, or that's, easily affected by these type of comments, man, you're going to be sad on social media. Not only that, you're going to compare yourself to better, because there's always somebody better in your head than you. So you have to kind of have the right mindset to be on it.
Yeah.
So it's not because you're creative that, you're just going to post your stuff on there and then all of a sudden people will like it. The same people who might have said it in their head when they go to the gallery, and they see one of your photos, like, man, this sucks. Now they're behind a keyboard. They just put it under your photo. So
Right.
that's the way
Right.
the
Yeah.
people do it.
That's how it works. But I always say life is about choices, right? Just like you have a choice every time you click that shutter button, right?
Yep.
And so life is about choices, and I can choose if I by all means, honest critique I welcome. But if it's somebody that's just gonna, try and bash my work, I mean, that's fine. Have at it and have fun.
I used
But I'll
to.
just figure all that out, right?
When I started on YouTube, YouTube is probably even worse when it comes to comments and stuff than Instagram. And I used to like think about answers and stuff like that. Now, what I do if I don't feel like it's constructive or valuable feedback, I hide the user and just no, you're gone. I don't need that. I don't need that in my life. I'm sharing free content. I'm sharing my stuff. I'm sharing my learnings. When I fail, when I succeed, and you're bashing, I don't need you. I'm just hiding you from the channel.
Right.
So that might be a bit harsh, but to your point, it's all about choices, and it's my choice. So,
Exactly.
but Jean-Marie, you mentioned like a boutique and also the exhibition you had there. So how is it to see a printed photo on the wall and seeing another human being looking at it versus what we just discussed, people scrolling, liking, whatever you want to call it? Describe that feeling of seeing people like in awe in front of one of your photos.
It was a rush, quite honestly. It was fantastic. It At first I was very nervous because there were actually 10 photographers included in this exhibit. We all had 3 images on the walls. And I thought, oh boy, there's some incredible work here on the walls. They're just not even going to take time to look at mine. And we had an opening reception, and I mean we did a video, like a live Instagram interview. We did all these different things, right? But then we had that reception, and to walk, like, folks kind of walked around and you could see where they were stopping and what they were pausing at. And I had one of the images that I had was a woman. It was really amazing light, and I caught her actually running, and she had a mask on, and the light was coming behind and really highlighting her hair, and you couldn't tell if she was running to or from someone, or what was really happening. It was very emotional, though. And I had one woman stand there, and I think she looked at the image for probably 10 minutes,
Wow.
and she's like, I just can't step away from this. It is so emotional, especially in the times that we're in with COVID, because that was obviously right in the heart of everything happening with COVID. She's like, with everything happening, and she's like, I have such an emotional reaction to this photograph. And my first thought in my mind was, well, that's great. You should buy it.
Yeah, exactly. If you like it, buy it. It's right there.
So, because that, she could
Yeah.
have, but that was super flattering. Yeah, it was pretty cool. I mean, the gallery manager at the time, provided a lot of great feedback as well, and it
Nice.
was it was pretty cool. I don't know if anyone though would take the time in that environment to say, what the heck were you thinking? How did you get these pieces on the walls? Like, I don't know, but it is very surreal.
Yeah.
To stand there and actually, like, I mean, we mentioned Phil Penman. Salgado's exhibited in that gallery.
Wow.
Like, there are countless amazing photographers that I've been in that very same gallery for, just piecing through their exhibits, and there's my work on the same walls,
It's
right? For me, that
Salgato,
was huge.
Penman, and now Detcher. There you go.
Yeah, there you go.
Speaking of inspiring people like Phil and Sebastian, I don't know if I'll pronounce him, or Sebastian.
Yeah.
Who else do you go to for inspiration? You did mention somebody you did a workshop with. but
Mhm.
anyone that you're like, wow, anytime I go through his book or her book, or through his work or her work, I feel energized and inspired.
Yeah. How much time do you have?
Let's go with the top two.
Oh my gosh, I don't think I can go to the top two, but like Constantine Manos, like amazing work.
Okay.
And he was actually, I think, the very first to exhibit in that Boston gallery. So of course you have like Elliot Erwitt is
Mm.
incredible. Robert Frank, Alex Off,
Yep.
worked there. Larry Clark, his book Tulsa was pretty cool. Doug, I'm probably not going to pronounce it right. Menwes.
Hmm.
He did a book called Fearless Genius.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
That was, pretty cool. I love Vivian Meyer.
Yes.
I feel like I can really connect with Vivian Meyer. Um, yeah, and I think ironically, like my inspiration outside of photography, it would be more somebody like Anthony Bourdain,
Hmm. We have the
right?
same inspiration outside
Really,
of photography.
really, yeah. I mean,
Absolutely.
so people they're like, "Oh, Anthony Bourdain, really?" Because there's obviously he had
Yeah, he had some issues, and
quite a story.
it didn't end well. But while he was
Right.
alive,
Yeah,
yeah, the way he
yeah,
was creating his own
right.
world was very unique and very inspiring. Yeah.
Right. The way he was creating is focused on food and culture and travel and adventure and
And connecting
like,
with people. We happened to have a camera in our hand to do the same exact thing he was doing through food and
yep,
booze and stuff, and
yep,
having fun. I feel the same way sometimes with a camera. When somebody walks up to me, it's like, hey, cool camera, blah blah blah. Start talking and like, and then we end up talking about other thing than photography, and then we end up exchanging an email. Or that for me is
right.
like, wow, this is, and I want to learn more about the culture, especially when I
Yeah,
travel. So yeah,
yeah,
I think it's Gerald Maritz who said you have a license to see. I would go even further that when you have a camera or you do what Anthony Bourdain does or did, you have a license to connect. It's just
connect.
it's giving you the opportunity to connect, which might not have if you're just standing in the corner and reading the
Right,
internet all day.
right. I agree. I agree.
So wow,
So yeah,
you
those
gave
are
us a
the
lot,
two.
but now I need, yeah, those are your two ish eight. Um, I picked up. Well, what about Soil Lighter? I mean, I don't think he gets enough recognition. Soil Lighter. I think I'm probably the only one, or
Yeah.
with the photographer that I talked to, nobody mentioned him. Why?
No, I would put him on my list.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
it's Leiter, right? Is that how you pronounce his last name
Uh,
or spell his last name?
Lighter. Lighter. Yeah. Soil Lighter.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Uh,
yeah,
but
yeah. But a little out of the. I mean, you gave me two.
yeah,
I
there you go. I think the listeners will have a lot of book to buy after a conversation, books to buy, or art to buy. So we talked about, and this is my last question before we wrap up. But I have to ask it because you did mention it in the intro that you are a woman photographer, and that I
Mhm.
haven't interviewed a lot of women. But there's a reason for that. It's because there's not a lot of women
Yeah,
in street photography, actually in photography, but even more in street photography. So it's twofold question. So the first one is why? I'm sure you have a point of view on that. And secondly, what makes you want to showcase that even more? The fact that hey, more women should be doing photography. This is my question.
oh, why? So why aren't there more women?
Yes.
Hmm. That I mean, I personally know other women that are photographers. I I don't know.
Mm,
I imagine part of it is just choice, right?
yeah.
Choice, interests, things like that. Um, yeah, I think when you're out on the streets, there's probably, I'm guessing, some people presume that they can't do certain things as a woman. myself, I'm a little fearless out
Hmm.
there.
But that's true.
I
What you're saying, I've never thought about that. That it
safety.
safety.
Yeah.
Yeah, it might
Yeah.
be one of the reasons. Might not just explain everything, but might be one of the reasons.
Right. It could be. And for myself, I think it's also personality too, right? I
Hmm.
mean, but there's lots there's lots of women out there.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, I'm definitely more of an extrovert. I
Yeah.
can, and I've traveled a lot. I can connect with a bump on a log. Like I can usually connect and have a conversation with just about anyone if I want to, or I can wander the streets, alone and be perfectly content. So I'm not sure. I think is the fearless side of it for me comes from just a background of I'm a longtime cancer survivor actually. And I've always said
Well.
when you have looked death right in the face
Hmm.
and just given it the big middle finger, and gone through that kind of experience, going back to that comment about choices, like making these choices to go out and do these kinds of things, becomes very easy for myself. So I don't know if that plays into it. I don't know. I'm also like physically there may be a component of that too. I don't want to draw on the physical part of it, but I am not short.
Hmm.
I am not petite.
Yeah.
I am,
You don't
you
mind
know,
carrying around those heavy
I
Leicas for all the yeah.
Yeah, I'm like, "No, I'll take you down, but if somebody comes after me, I'll whack them in the head with it," right?
Well, especially if you
I
have
don't
a
know if any
Leica, that makes a very good self defense tool.
it's a great self-defense tool, but I am like,
Yeah.
I don't know what it is in meters, but I'm 5 feet 9
Hmm.
inches. I'm tall,
Yep.
right? And I have always said, be confident, walk with confidence,
Hmm.
and and own it. But I'm smart about it too. I'm street smart, so I can get out there. I know when I'm in a situation in an area that I shouldn't be, and I get right out of there. I don't have a problem, and I'm very smart about it. But I don't know. I really don't know. I think part of it is around exposure.
Yep. Yeah.
I think it's around getting work exposed, and choices that are made around, you know, galleries, publishers, editors, all like the history of that, um, and not a lot of women being chosen.
Hmm. You know
If I
what?
were to think about if I were to think about root cause, it
Yeah.
probably
And I
goes
think you're
back
right.
to a
And
lot
I
of
think
that.
you're right. And I mean, we can see it, in contest galleries. To your point, but to your point, we need women like you that go in and say, you know what, middle finger, I'm going in. I'm going to do my thing. I don't need you guys to tell me what to do, what I can do, what I cannot do. And I find this very inspiring. And also the fact that you are on top of being a photographer, a surfer, a cyclist, a golfer, a tennis player, a music fan, a napper, a dog lover, a wine lover, and a world traveler. That impresses me also about everything you do outside of photography. That might explains why you have that energy to just go, all in on photography. So, Jean-Marie, it's been very, very interesting conversation, and I'm sure that our listeners will want to find more about you. Where should they go to discover your work, connect with you, and find out more about you?
Yeah, so my website is just www.detcherphotography.com, Detcher. My new Instagram
Aha.
is jm.streetphotography. The old one shall remain nameless, but you may find another one out there. Just ignore the other one. There's probably some fantastic work out there, though, on
but
that
but
page.
but that brings a question, though. I mean, the work's still there,
From what I understand, it is.
and you
It is
just
all
can't
still there.
log back in,
I
and
can't.
okay,
And it was right. It was public, and now it's set to private.
okay, got
So,
it.
and I had unfriended that person.
Yes,
Um, I didn't friend that whatever
yeah,
um, hacker
yeah,
when I created my new account.
yeah.
So yeah, I do have a landscape and portrait. page as well, just Detcher Photography
Nice.
on Instagram. And then on Vero, I have JM Street Photography also. So that's just the street photography. So
Nice.
so I'm out there. I'm out and about doing
That's
my social thing.
That's great. That's
Being
great.
busy.
And I invite people to go see your work. Very, very impressive. And Jean-Marie, thank you so much again for joining me today. I like the fact that you are a passionate, inspiring woman photographer who keep going and sharing and capturing those moments. And for me, again, it's very, very inspiring. And I would like for us to go out at some point and shoot together, either in Boston, Montreal, wherever we are in the world. Let's do it. Let's connect.
Absolutely.
We connected through social. Now let's capture some great shot together. And if anybody has any question for Jean-Marie, please don't hesitate also to use the links in the show description. I'll put all the links, Jean-Marie, that you gave me. And also, I've been Fred Ranger. If you have a question for me, I'm Fred Ranger on Instagram, on Vero, on YouTube, and all those great platforms. But I also have a website, and it's fredranger.com. And I want to thank you all for being part of this podcast this week. I'll be back with other great guests like Jean-Marie very, very soon. So see you next time. Thank you so much, Jean-Marie.